Zara, an alien scientist, had always been curious about the mysteries of the universe. She lived on a distant planet, where the sky was always a pale shade of purple, and the landscape was filled with tall, jagged mountains and vast, empty plains. Her people had always believed that their planet was the center of the galaxy, the last untouched world in the cosmos. But Zara had always felt that something was missing, something bigger than their own planet. For years, Zara had studied ancient texts and artifacts, trying to uncover the secrets of her species' past. She had spent countless hours in the great library of her people, looking for anything that might hint at the history of the galaxy beyond their borders. But despite all her research, she had found nothing, until now. One day, while exploring a remote part of the planet, Zara stumbled upon something strange. Hidden beneath the roots of an ancient tree, she found a small, glowing orb. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. The orb seemed to pulse with energy, glowing brighter as she approached it. It was as if it was alive, calling to her, urging her to pick it up. Zara carefully reached down and touched the orb. The moment her fingers made contact, a flash of light filled the air, and she was thrown back, her body crashing to the ground. For a moment, everything went black. When Zara opened her eyes, she found herself in a different place. She was no longer on the surface of her planet, but in a dark, cavernous room. The walls were covered in strange symbols that she didn't recognize, and the air was thick with dust. In the center of the room there was a large stone pedestal, and on top of it a holographic projection of an alien star map. Zara stood up slowly, her head spinning from the sudden shift. She tried to make sense of her surroundings. Where was she? How had she gotten here? And more importantly, what was this place? Her heart raced with excitement and fear. This was not just an ancient artifact. This was something far more important. The star map on the pedestal was a map of the galaxy, but it was different from anything she had seen before. The map showed star systems and planets that were unfamiliar to her. Some of them were far beyond the reach of her people, in parts of the galaxy they had never ventured. Zara stepped closer to the pedestal, her eyes scanning the map. She could feel a sense of urgency, as if something was pushing her to learn more. The holographic projection flickered and one of the symbols on the map began to glow. It was a symbol she recognized from the old texts, one that her people had always thought was a myth. The symbol represented an ancient species, one that had disappeared from the galaxy long ago. The symbol was linked to a powerful force, one that could change the course of history. Zara's mind raced as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Could it be possible? Could this really be the key to unlocking the secrets of the galaxy? And what did it mean for her people? Before she could think any further, she heard a sound, footsteps echoing in the distance. Someone was coming. Zara quickly hid behind a large pillar, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know who it was, but she couldn't afford to be caught. Not yet. Through a small crack in the pillar, Zara peeked out and saw a figure approaching. It was a human, one of the explorers from the distant planets. She had heard rumors of humans before, but she had never seen one in person. The human was tall with dark hair and a rugged look. He carried a weapon strapped to his back, but there was something in his eyes, a sense of determination mixed with curiosity, that intrigued Zara. The human stopped in front of the pedestal, staring at the glowing map. Zara's breath caught in her throat. What was he doing here? How had he found this place? Had he been looking for the same thing? The human reached out and touched the map. As his fingers made contact, the symbols began to shift and change, as if responding to his touch. Zara watched in awe, realizing that the map was reacting to him in the same way it had to her. There was something about this human, something that made him different. Zara's mind raced with questions. Was this a coincidence, or was there something more to this encounter? Could the human be part of a greater plan, one that involved her and her people? Before Zara could gather her thoughts, the human spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried a sense of authority. I didn't expect to find anyone else here, he said. Who are you? Zara froze. She had no idea how to answer. Should she reveal herself? Should she trust this human? As the tension in the air grew thick, Zara made her decision. She stepped out from behind the pillar and stood tall, facing the human for the first time. "I'm Zara," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know how you found this place, but you need to leave now." The human looked at her with surprise, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, without saying another word, the human turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Zara to contemplate what this strange encounter meant for the future. As the door closed behind him, Zara knew one thing for certain. This discovery was just the beginning, and the secrets it held would change everything. The air outside the chamber was thick with tension. Zara's heart still raced from the moment she had stepped out and confronted the human. She had expected him to run, or perhaps to react with violence, but instead, he simply stared at her, as if sizing her up. The silence between them was deafening, yet Zara couldn't help but feel a strange sense of curiosity bubbling up inside her. Who was this human? Why had he come here? Zara had always believed her people were the only advanced civilization on this planet. The idea that a human, an alien from another world, would be here, in the same hidden chamber where she had just discovered the key to the galaxy's most powerful secrets, felt impossible. The human's sudden arrival was like a storm breaking through her calm, turning everything upside down. She took a deep breath and glanced around, the ancient chamber now feeling colder than before. The strange symbols that had once intrigued her now seemed menacing. This human had to be dealt with, but Zara wasn't sure what to do next. If he learned about the map, if he discovered what she had uncovered, it could mean disaster for her people. But before she could decide, the human spoke again, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "You know, it's not every day you find an alien in a place like this," he said with a dry chuckle. There was a certain calmness in his tone, something Zara didn't expect. He didn't sound scared, not even a little. He just sounded curious, as if meeting an alien in a secret chamber was an everyday occurrence for him. Zara narrowed her eyes, not sure if she should trust him. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice firm but cautious. The human raised his hands in a gesture of peace, showing her that he meant no harm. "I could ask you the same thing, but I'm guessing we both want the same thing." He gestured to the glowing map. "That's some kind of star map, right? I've never seen anything like it." Zara's mind raced. How much did he know? How had he come to understand so much about the map, even though it had taken her years of study to uncover its secrets? "Why are you here?" Zara repeated, her tone sharp. "How did you find this place?" The human shrugged, his expression unreadable. "You're not the only one who's curious. I've been tracking unusual energy signals in this area for weeks. When I saw this place on my scanners, I had to check it out. I didn't expect to find an alien, though." Zara was taken aback. "You've been tracking energy signals? For what purpose?" she asked, still trying to piece together why he was so calm, so focused. "I'm an explorer," the human said, "part of a team studying planets across the galaxy. We've been gathering data on energy sources, anomalies in ancient civilizations. This place is one of the biggest finds I've ever come across." Zara's brow furrowed. It seemed this human was more than just a wandering adventurer. His calm demeanor and scientific approach made him a threat in ways she hadn't expected. He wasn't here for treasure, not for simple wealth. He was here for knowledge that could destroy everything. He reached out and touched the star map again, his fingers brushing over the symbols. They responded to his touch, the map glowing even brighter. Zara stepped back instinctively, her heart pounding. She could sense the map's power, and yet something about the human's presence seemed to stir it in a way she couldn't explain. "What do you think it means?" he asked, still studying the map as it shifted under his touch. "These symbols, they feel alive." Zara hesitated. She had studied these symbols for years and understood their importance, but she had never seen anyone, let alone a human, affect them like this. She felt both captivated and fearful, torn between wanting to learn more and protecting her planet's secret. "I don't know," she finally admitted, her voice softer than before. "But I believe it's the key to something bigger. Something that could change everything." The human turned to face her, his eyes locking onto hers. "What do you mean? What's so special about this place?" Zara took a deep breath and stepped closer to him. "This map, it's not just a map. It shows the locations of ancient civilizations that have long since disappeared. But it also points to something much more dangerous. Something that could destroy us all." The human stared at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Zara wondered if she had said too much. Had she revealed too much of what she had uncovered? But before she could say another word, a distant rumble shook the ground beneath them. The walls trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. "Do you hear that?" the human asked, his voice suddenly serious. Zara's heart skipped a beat. She had heard it too. It was the sound of something massive approaching, something dangerous. The rumble grew louder, and Zara could feel the ground beneath her shaking more intensely now. There was no time to think, no time to prepare. "It's not safe here," Zara said quickly, her mind racing. "We need to leave now." But the human didn't move. Instead, he grabbed her arm, his grip firm and urgent. "We need to stick together," he said. "I don't know what's coming, but it's not going to be good. You can't face it alone." Zara pulled her arm away, her eyes narrowing. She didn't trust this human, but in that moment she realized that perhaps for the first time she didn't have a choice. The ground shook once more, and in the distance the sound of something huge crashing toward them grew louder. Zara's pulse quickened. "You're right," she said. "We need to go." And with that, the two unlikely allies, a human and an alien, turned toward the door, ready to face whatever was coming their way. The heavy door to the ancient chamber groaned as Zara and the human, whose name was Blake she had learned just moments before, ran through it, the floor shaking beneath their feet. They barely had time to think, the rumbling growing louder, with each passing second. Zara's heart was racing, her mind still spinning from the realization that she had just teamed up with a human, one who was not only calm under pressure but also had a deep understanding of things she hadn't yet fully grasped herself. Blake kept pace with her as they sprinted down narrow, dimly lit corridors. His eyes darted around, scanning the walls for any sign of danger. Despite the danger, there was a focused calm about him, like he had dealt with situations like this before. Zara couldn't help but feel a strange mix of awe and suspicion. Who was this human, really? Blake glanced over at her, his expression tense. "How much do you know about this place?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. "Because whatever is coming, I don't think it's just a random quake." Zara didn't answer immediately. She had so many questions of her own, but right now, survival was more important than explanations. "Not enough," she said. "But I believe it's more than just an abandoned ruin. There's something dangerous about it." Blake nodded, his face grim. "I can feel that too. The map you showed me, it's not just a record of old civilizations, is it?" Zara stopped in her tracks, her breath catching. She hadn't expected him to pick up on that so quickly. Blake wasn't just any explorer. He had insight into things she had barely begun to understand. "No," she said slowly. "It's not. The map points to something powerful, something older than either of us." Blake raised an eyebrow. "And you think it's hidden here? On this planet?" "Yes," Zara replied, her voice sharp. "But we're not the only ones who know about it." As if on cue, the rumbling intensified. A distant roar echoed through the tunnels, growing louder. Zara could feel her body tense. It wasn't just the ground shaking anymore. It felt like the planet itself was alive, reacting to whatever was approaching. Blake didn't wait for her to finish speaking. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward a narrow side passage, his grip strong. "We don't have time for a conversation," he said urgently. "We need to get out of here, fast." They ran deeper into the labyrinth of the underground structure, Zara barely keeping up. The walls closed in around them, and the air grew heavier with each step. There were no windows, no signs of life, just endless stone corridors and the sound of their hurried footsteps. Blake led her to a large chamber. The walls here were adorned with strange, twisting symbols Zara had seen in her research but never quite understood. They glowed faintly in the dim light, like they were alive. Blake seemed unfazed, though, his focus sharp as ever. "This place?" Blake said, scanning the room. "It's designed to keep something in or something out." Zara looked around, her eyes narrowing. She felt the weight of the room settle over her. It was as if the very air was thick with secrets, as if the room itself was waiting for them to unlock something. "What do you mean?" Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't like the way the atmosphere felt. It was suffocating, like something was watching them. Blake didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward a large stone slab embedded in the floor. It was covered in the same symbols that decorated the walls. His fingers brushed lightly over the surface, and Zara could feel the energy in the room shift, as if the slab was alive, reacting to his touch. "I think this is it," Blake murmured. "This is the key." Zara's breath caught in her throat. "The key to what?" Blake turned to face her, his eyes locked on hers. "The key to unlocking whatever this place is hiding." Before Zara could respond, a loud crash echoed from the tunnels behind them. The ground shook again, stronger this time. She felt a cold wave of dread wash over her as the walls vibrated with a low hum. "We need to move," she said, panic rising in her chest. "Now!" Blake nodded, his face set in determination. Without another word, he grabbed the stone slab and pressed harder, as if trying to force it open. The symbols on the wall seemed to respond, shifting in an intricate dance, and the slab groaned as if it were alive. Slowly, it began to slide open, revealing a dark, narrow passage beneath it. Zara didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, the need to escape pushing her forward. As she passed Blake, she glanced back, only to find his gaze fixed on the opening, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. But before she could step fully into the passage, a shrill noise erupted from behind them, a screech so high-pitched it seemed to reverberate in her bones. Zara spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. Out of the shadows at the far end of the chamber, something moved. It was massive, its form barely visible in the dark, but the red glow of its eyes was unmistakable. Zara felt her breath catch in her throat. It wasn't a human, nor was it any alien species she had ever seen. The creature's body was a grotesque combination of mechanical and organic parts, something twisted and unnatural. Blake stepped forward, instinctively moving to shield Zara, but she stopped him. "No," she said, her voice steady despite the terror creeping up her spine. "We can't fight it. We need to run." Without another word, Blake nodded. Together they dashed down the narrow passage, the creature's shrieks echoing behind them. As they sprinted through the darkness, Zara's mind raced. What was that thing, and what was it guarding? Blake glanced over his shoulder. "We're not out of the woods yet," he said, panting. "But I think I know what we're dealing with." Zara looked at him, her heart still hammering. "What do you mean?" Blake's expression was grim. "I think we just woke up something we weren't meant to." As the creature's howls grew, distant, Zara realized that this was no longer just an ancient discovery. It was something much bigger, something that could change the fate of their entire galaxy. The narrow tunnel stretched on, winding deeper into the forgotten belly of the planet. The air grew colder with every step, thick with dust and the scent of ancient stone. Blake and Zara were silent now, the heavy weight of their situation pressing down on them as they navigated the dark labyrinth. The distant screeches of the creature they had fled from echoed through the passages, reminding them that danger was never far behind. But the deeper they went, the further away it seemed to be. Still, neither of them dared to relax. Blake's hand rested on the hilt of the weapon strapped to his back, his fingers twitching as though he were ready to draw it at a moment's notice. Zara, on the other hand, was alert in a different way. She could feel the strange vibrations in the walls, the hum of the ancient energy beneath the stone. The planet itself seemed to be alive, like it was watching them, waiting. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel, which opened into another vast chamber. This one was unlike the others they had seen. Its walls were adorned with intricate carvings, glowing faintly with an eerie, otherworldly light. The air was thick with an energy that seemed to pulse and breathe. Zara stepped forward cautiously, her eyes scanning the room. This place, it feels different, almost like it's alive. Her voice trembled despite her best efforts to stay composed. Blake stood beside her, his eyes narrowing. I know what you mean. The energy here feels like it's pulling us in, like it wants us to touch it. Whatever's happening here, it's not just a relic from the past, this is active. Zara nodded, her mind racing. She had always suspected that there was something more to these ancient ruins, something that could change everything. But standing here, in this strange, pulsing room, the reality of it all began to settle in. She wasn't just discovering the past. She was standing on the precipice of something bigger, something that neither she nor Blake fully understood. But before she could speak, the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. A low, mechanical hum filled the air, and the room seemed to shift. The walls, once still, began to move, sliding apart with a screeching noise as if the room itself was waking up. Blake took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. What the hell? I think it's activating, Zara said, her voice strained as the walls continued to shift, revealing a hidden platform at the center of the room. On it, a strange ancient device hummed with power. It looked like a cross between a control panel and an altar, with glowing symbols embedded into its surface. The energy in the room intensified. The symbols on the device flared to life, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Zara felt a chill crawl down her spine. This wasn't meant to be discovered, she muttered. Blake turned to her, his eyes wide. Do you think this is what we're looking for? Zara didn't answer immediately. Her mind was spinning. The device was connected to the energy they had been feeling all along, the same energy that seemed to pulse from the walls of the planet itself. She could feel it drawing her in, urging her to step closer, to touch it. But something about it felt wrong. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her fingers barely grazing the surface of the glowing symbols. The moment her skin made contact, the entire room seemed to come alive. The air crackled with electricity, and the ground trembled beneath them. A harsh mechanical sound filled the air as the device began to power up, its symbols swirling faster, glowing brighter. Blake stepped forward, a sense of urgency in his movements. Zara, what's happening? Zara didn't know how to answer. She could feel the energy coursing through her, growing stronger with each passing second. It was like the device was syncing with her very being, pulling at something deep inside her. I don't know, Zara said, her voice tight. But I think it's connecting to me, or to something else. As she spoke, the room seemed to shift again. A crack appeared in the floor, and from it, a figure emerged, tall, shadowed, and cloaked in a dark mist. Zara's heart skipped a beat. The figure stepped forward, its eyes glowing a bright red, locking onto hers. The figure's voice was low and mechanical, its tone cold. You should not have come here. Zara's pulse quickened, her instincts screaming at her to run, to get away from this thing, but she couldn't move. She was frozen, her hand still resting on the device as the figure stepped closer, its presence oppressive and terrifying. Blake's hand moved toward his weapon, but the figure raised a hand, and the weapon seemed to freeze in midair. No, the figure said, its voice chilling. You will not fight. You will listen. The figure's gaze turned back to Zara, and it spoke again, its voice almost hypnotic. You were never meant to find this. The galaxy was not meant to be yours. Zara swallowed hard, trying to steady her breath. Who are you? The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it turned its gaze to the device Zara had touched. The room seemed to quiet for a moment, and then, with a sharp sound, the device powered down. The lights dimmed and the oppressive energy that had filled the room suddenly vanished. Zara stepped back, her body trembling. "What was that?" she whispered. Blake's voice was low, his hand still hovering near his weapon. "I don't know, but I don't think we're alone here anymore." The figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving nothing behind but the faintest trace of its presence, an unsettling chill in the air. Zara and Blake stood in silence for a long moment, both trying to make sense of what had just happened. The planet, the device, the figure, it was all too much to comprehend in one go. "I think we have to work together now," Blake said finally, his voice steady despite the shock. "Whatever this is, we need each other to survive it." Zara nodded slowly. For the first time since meeting Blake, she felt a flicker of something, an alliance. They didn't fully trust each other yet, but the situation was too dire to go it alone. The secrets of this planet were too dangerous, and the forces they had awakened were something neither of them could face by themselves. "We don't have a choice," Zara said, her voice firm. "We stick together, or we die alone." Blake gave her a sharp nod, his expression serious. "Let's move, and stay close. Whatever comes next, we're in this together." As the two of them turned and walked toward the dark corridor beyond, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they had just stepped into something much bigger than either of them had anticipated. But one thing was clear. Their journey had only just begun. And in this place, survival depended on more than just strength. It depended on trust. The deep corridors seemed endless. Zara and Blake had been walking for what felt like hours, yet every turn, every passage looked the same. The walls, once alive with strange symbols, now appeared to be fading into obscurity, as if the planet itself was growing tired of the intrusion. There was a heavy silence that hung between them, a silence that spoke of uncertainty and the fear of the unknown. Zara's mind raced with the haunting words of the shadowy figure they had encountered earlier. "You were never meant to find this. The galaxy was not meant to be yours." What did it mean? Who was that being, and why had it said such things? Her thoughts were interrupted by Blake's voice, low and steady. "We need to keep moving. The more time we waste, the more we're putting ourselves at risk." Zara nodded, her eyes still scanning their surroundings. The passage they were walking through seemed to narrow as they continued forward, and she could feel the pressure building, as though the walls themselves were closing in. Despite the urgency in Blake's voice, Zara couldn't shake the sensation that the deeper they went, the more the planet was reacting to their presence. "It feels like we're being watched," she whispered, more to herself than to Blake. Blake gave her a sidelong glance but didn't answer immediately. His grip on the weapon tightened. "We are. This whole place is one giant trap. It wants us to keep going, to uncover whatever it's hiding." A chill ran down Zara's spine. Blake's words weren't comforting. They spoke of something far more dangerous than they had realized. Suddenly, the walls around them began to hum, the air thickening with a strange energy. The glow of the symbols returned, brighter this time, pulsating with a rhythm that matched the pounding of their hearts. Zara stopped in her tracks, her eyes wide. This isn't just a ruin," she breathed. "This is something alive. Something is reacting to us." Blake turned to face her, his expression serious. "We're too deep now. We can't turn back." Zara opened her mouth to protest, but before she could speak, the floor beneath them gave way with a loud crash, sending them tumbling down into the darkness below. She heard Blake shout, but the world spun around her, and everything went black. When Zara came to, she was lying on the cold, hard floor. Her head throbbed, and there was a sharp pain in her side. She tried to sit up, but immediately stopped as dizziness overwhelmed her. The air was thick with dust, and the faint glow of the symbols they had seen earlier illuminated the chamber. As her vision cleared, Zara realized that they had fallen into another vast underground space, a room even larger than the ones before. Blake was already on his feet, brushing himself off. "You okay?" he asked, his voice more concerned than she expected. Zara nodded, pushing herself to her feet. "I think so. What is this place?" Blake's eyes were scanning the room, his expression unreadable. I don't know, but I have a feeling we've just discovered the heart of this place. Zara turned her attention to the room around them. The walls were lined with dark, polished stone, and at the center of the room, there was a massive platform, much larger than anything they had seen before. The symbols were etched deep into the stone, their glow brighter now as if they were alive and reacting to their presence. In the middle of the platform was a large crystal, suspended in mid-air by an invisible force. It pulsed with a soft blue light, and as Zara watched, she could feel its energy reaching out to her, drawing her in like a magnet. She instinctively took a step forward, her hand reaching out toward it. Blake grabbed her arm, his grip firm. "Don't touch it," he warned. "It's not just a crystal, it's something else, something powerful." Zara pulled her arm away, her breath quickening. She had felt the pull too, the overwhelming urge to reach for it. But Blake was right. There was something dangerous about it, something that didn't feel right. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Blake's eyes were fixed on the crystal, his expression tense. "I think it's the core, the source of the power that runs through this whole place. It's not just a relic, it's a living energy source, something older than either of us. I think it's what's keeping this planet alive." Zara's heart skipped a beat. A living energy source? That was impossible, wasn't it? "But why is it here?" she asked, still trying to make sense of everything. Why was it hidden? Away? And what does it have to do with us? Blake's jaw clenched, his mind clearly working through the same questions. "I don't know, but I'm starting to think we weren't the first ones to come looking for it. Whatever that creature was and whatever force is controlling this planet, it's trying to stop us from getting too close to the truth." Before Zara could respond, a low rumble echoed through the chamber and the crystal began to hum louder, vibrating with energy. The symbols on the walls flashed brightly, and Zara could feel the air growing heavier, charged with electricity. Then, as if responding to the building energy, the floor cracked open beneath them. The chamber began to shake violently, the walls groaning as if they were alive, twisting and shifting. Blake grabbed Zara's arm again, pulling her toward the platform. "We need to get out of here now." But it was too late. From the cracks in the floor, shadowy figures began to rise. Creatures like the one they had seen before, but more numerous, more monstrous. Their eyes glowed with a sickly red hue, and their form shifted between mechanical and organic in ways that defied understanding. Zara's pulse quickened. These were the Guardians, the ones who had been keeping the truth hidden for so long. They weren't going to let them leave without a fight. Blake's hand moved to his weapon, but Zara stopped him. "No, we can't fight them," she said, her voice trembling. "We have to shut down the crystal. It's the only way to stop this." Blake looked at her, eyes wide. "How?" Zara's mind raced as the room filled with the sound of the creatures, growls and the crackling energy of the crystal. She glanced at the symbols on the walls and then back at the platform. There had to be a way to stop it. There had to be a way to shut down the source of the power before everything was lost. "I think I know how," she said, her voice steely with determination. Without giving Blake a chance to protest, Zara sprinted toward the crystal. The creatures were closing in, their movements fast and purposeful, but Zara could feel it. She was running out of time. This was their only chance. With one final glance at Blake, she reached for the crystal, her fingers brushing its surface. The moment her skin made contact, a surge of energy shot through her body, and the world went white. In that blinding moment, Zara understood everything. The truth was far bigger than she had imagined, and the journey ahead would test them both in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. The blinding light of the crystal faded, leaving Zara gasping for air, her heart racing. She stood at the center of the chamber, her hands trembling as the energy from the crystal still pulsed through her body. The room was quiet now, save for the faint hum of the crystal, which had stopped glowing as intensely as before. Zara's mind was a whirlwind. What had just happened? She had felt the energy surge through her, seen the truth of everything laid bare, and yet She couldn't fully grasp what it all meant. The crystal, its power, its purpose, was tied to the very essence of the planet. But it was also more than that. The strange creatures, the guardians that had risen from the cracks in the floor, were connected to it somehow. The energy, the life force that powered this place, had a purpose beyond simply existing. It was something older, something far more dangerous than any of them had realized. Blake was still at the far side of the room, his hand resting on his weapon, eyes darting nervously from the crystal to the shifting shadows that had begun to move once again. The guardians were not gone, far from it. They were gathering, preparing to charge. What happened? Blake's voice was sharp, his gaze piercing as he moved toward her. What did you see? Zara's breath was shallow as she struggled to find the right words. I saw everything, she said slowly, her voice low. The energy here is not just a power source. It's alive, and it's connected to something much older than this planet. The guardians. They are the protectors, but they're also part of it. They're not just defending the crystal, they're keeping something in check. Blake's face darkened, his eyes narrowing. Keeping something in check, what does that mean? Zara paused, the weight of her next words pressing down on her chest. I think it means they're keeping a secret buried here, a secret that could destroy everything. A growl from one of the creatures snapped them both back to reality. The guardians were closing in, their movements faster now, more coordinated. Blake gripped his weapon tightly, ready to face the threat head-on. But Zara's instincts screamed at her that they couldn't fight their way out of this. We need to leave, Zara said urgently, her mind already working. There's a way out, but it's through the old tunnels near the east wall. We have to move quickly. Blake nodded without hesitation, and they turned to head for the exit. But just as they reached the doorway, something unexpected happened. Zara felt a sharp pain in her side, a sudden pressure as though something had latched onto her. She turned, heart racing, to find Blake, his eyes wide but his hand still gripping his weapon. He had betrayed her. Before she could react, Blake's voice cut through the air. I'm sorry, Zara. I didn't want it to come to this, but you've seen too much. I can't let you leave. Zara's pulse hammered in her ears as she took a step back, her eyes locked on Blake's face. The betrayal was clear now. There was something in his eyes, something cold and calculating, that she hadn't noticed before. The man who had stood beside her, the one who had shared in her discoveries, was not the person she had thought he was. You, Zara breathed, struggling to comprehend what was happening. You've been working with them, all along? Blake lowered his weapon slightly, his expression hardening. Not with them, but I've been following their orders, and I've been keeping an eye on you. I had to, Zara. I couldn't let you get too close to the truth. Zara felt her knees weaken as the full weight of his betrayal hit her. She had trusted him. She had thought, despite everything, that Blake was just another explorer trying to understand the galaxy. But now she realized the truth. He was a pawn in something much bigger, a force she couldn't yet fully understand. Why? She whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Why would you betray me? Why would you want to protect something so dangerous? Blake's gaze softened, but only for a moment. Because you don't understand, Zara. You don't know what this place really is. The crystal, it's not just power. It's an anchor, holding something back. You were never meant to uncover it, and now, you've given them a way to break free. Zara's mind reeled. Break free from what? What's down here, Blake? Blake took a step forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. It's an ancient force, a being of unimaginable power. It's been trapped for millennia. This planet, the crystal, the guardians, they are all here to keep it from escaping. But you, Zara, you've triggered something. The energy you released when you touched the crystal, it's starting to wake up. And now it's only a matter of time before it breaks free. The room seemed to spin around her as Blake's words sank in. The creature they had been running from, the guardians, they weren't just protecting the crystal. They were holding something back, something far worse than either of them could have imagined. You have to stop it, Blake continued, his voice filled with urgency. If that creature breaks free, the galaxy will never be the same. It will destroy everything in its path. You don't understand what you've done. But I do, and now I have to make sure you don't get any closer to it. Zara's mind raced as she tried to piece together the puzzle. She had known there was more to this planet, more to the crystal, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. If what Blake was saying was true, then the very thing they had awakened could end all life as they knew it. No, Zara said, her voice firm now, a new resolve filling her. You're wrong, Blake. We can't let this force be unleashed. We have to stop it. Blake's eyes hardened, his grip tightening on his weapon once more. I'm not going to let you do that. Zara didn't hesitate. She had to act before it was too late. In one swift movement, she reached for the nearest stone, a jagged edge hidden in the shadows. Without warning, she threw it at Blake, aiming for his hand, hoping to disarm him. The stone hit its mark, knocking the weapon from his grip. He cursed under his breath and lunged at her, but Zara was already moving, her body propelled by the adrenaline of betrayal. She ran toward the east wall, the old tunnels Blake had mentioned earlier, the only way out. Behind her, Blake shouted in fury, but Zara didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. The only thing that mattered now was stopping whatever had been awakened. And as she sprinted through the dark passage, her mind focused on one singular goal: to ensure that Blake's betrayal didn't cost them everything. Zara's breath came in quick, sharp gasps as she ran through the labyrinth of tunnels. The walls were a blur of stone and shadow, the faint glow from the crystals now distant behind her. She could feel the weight of Blake's betrayal bearing down on her, but the urgency of the situation left no room for hesitation. She had to stop what had been set into motion before it was too late. Every step felt heavier, as though the planet itself was trying to pull her down, to stop her from reaching the heart of the truth. But Zara refused to slow down. The force Blake had spoken of, the ancient, unimaginable power, was still lurking in the depths, waiting to break free. She couldn't let that happen. Not after everything she had learned. The rumble in the ground grew stronger with each passing second, and she could feel it deep in her bones. It was getting closer. The Guardians, no, the Protectors, had likely sensed the disturbance. They knew that whatever she had done, whatever Blake had triggered, could no longer be ignored. Zara's mind raced as she rounded another corner, the path narrowing, the air thickening, the crystal. It was the key. She had to find a way to reverse the energy, to sever the connection. The crystal was the anchor, the force that had been holding everything in place, but now it was starting to crumble under the weight of the power Zara had unknowingly unleashed. The deeper she ventured into the tunnels, the more she felt the weight of it pressing in on her. Alive, angry, and on the brink of breaking free. As she neared the central chamber, Zara hesitated for just a moment. The creatures, those monstrous Guardians, hadn't followed her directly, but the sound of their heavy footfalls reverberated through the stone walls. They were close, too close. Zara's eyes swept over the room she entered. A vast, empty chamber, dimly lit by the residual energy from the crystal. In the center, the crystal now pulsed erratically, its once steady glow now flickering and unstable. The energy it had once contained was leaking, spilling out into the atmosphere, making the air crackle with tension. For the first time, Zara felt truly alone. Blake's betrayal, the strain of the journey, the knowledge that the fate of her people, and perhaps the galaxy, now rested on her shoulders, all seemed to weigh down on her at once. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for redemption, for the chance to make things right. But in order to stop the awakening force, she needed to destroy the crystal. She could feel its power pulling her in, overwhelming her senses, threatening to swallow her whole. It wasn't just a power source. It was a living, breathing force, ancient and unstoppable. She stepped toward it, cautiously, her hand hovering just above its surface. The closer she got, the more she could feel the energy wrapping around her, tugging at her like a rope pulling her toward the edge of an abyss. Zara gritted her teeth, her fingers brushing against the glowing surface of the crystal. A flash of light exploded from the crystal as her skin made contact. and a wave of energy crashed through her, sending her reeling back. She hit the ground hard, her vision spinning as the room seemed to pulse around her. The air was thick with electricity, and Zara could feel the tremors of the awakening force beneath the stone. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. The ground cracked open in front of her, revealing a dark abyss below. From within, a figure began to rise. A shadow, impossibly tall, its form a mixture of mechanical and organic components, twisting and writhing as if it was struggling to free itself from a prison. Zara's eyes widened in horror. This was it, the being Blake had spoken of, the force that had been trapped for so long. It towered over her, its red eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The Guardians had been right to protect the crystal, but now it was too late. The force was free. For a moment, Zara was frozen, unable to move. The creature was massive, its presence overwhelming, and its gaze locked onto her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. It stepped forward, its steps shaking the ground beneath her. And then as the creature reached out, its voice filled her mind, not through sound, but through sheer force of will. You have released me, little one. Do you understand the consequences of your actions? Zara felt a wave of terror wash over her, but she forced herself to stand tall. She had come too far to back down now. You won't get away with this, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. I'll stop you. The creature paused, its head tilting as though considering her words. Stop me? You think you can stop me when you are nothing more than a pawn in a game far beyond your understanding? Zara felt the words pierce through her, and for a moment doubt flickered within her. Could she really stop it? Could she reverse what she had done? But then, a surge of resolve filled her chest. She had no choice but to try. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everything she had ever known, the people she loved, the world she had vowed to protect. She turned to the crystal, now flickering weakly in the center of the room. If the crystal was the anchor, then perhaps the force could still be contained. Zara sprinted toward the platform, her body moving on instinct. With every step she could feel the pressure building around her, the energy from the creature pushing back, but she didn't stop. She had to act fast. Reaching the crystal, Zara placed both hands on its surface, drawing on every ounce of strength she had left. The energy around her crackled violently, but she pushed through the pain, focusing on the one thing she could control, the power flowing from the crystal. The creature's voice boomed in her mind once more, but Zara refused to listen. You cannot contain me. You will fail. Zara's heart pounded as she forced the energy to bend to her will, pulling at the very threads of power that held the creature back. She could feel the force, angry, powerful, relentless, pushing against her. But she fought harder, using the energy of the crystal to seal the force back into its prison. With one final push, Zara screamed, and the crystal flared to life. The room shook violently as the energy surged outward, the force recoiling as if it were being pulled back into the abyss. The creature let out a deafening roar of fury, but its power began to wane, its form flickering and dissipating as it was forced back into the darkness. Zara fell to her knees, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. The energy in the room finally began to settle, the crackling atmosphere fading into a calm silence. The creature was gone. The planet was safe. For now. As Zara looked up, she saw Blake standing in the doorway, his eyes filled with shock. He had been watching from a distance, unsure of whether she would succeed. You did it, Blake said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and awe. Zara stood, her body aching, but her heart lighter than it had been in days. No, she said softly, we did it. Together. Blake nodded, a hesitant smile creeping onto his face. I'm sorry, Zara. I should never have betrayed you. Zara didn't respond immediately. She knew the journey was far from over, and there was much to rebuild. But for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt like there was hope. the galaxy wasn't lost. And perhaps neither were they.